Hi, this is Mrs. Chavez. We're still in Chapter 13, The Resurgence of Empire in East Asia. This is Section 3. The Golden Age of Buddhism in China occurred during the Tang Dynasty. Although the Tang emperors were usually Taoist themselves, they favored Buddhism, which had become extremely popular. Under the Tang, the government extended its control over the monasteries and the ordination and legal status of monks. From this time forward, the Chinese monk styled himself very simply as Chen, meaning subject. During this period, several Chinese schools developed their own distinctive approaches and systematized the vast body of Buddhist texts and teachings. There was a great expansion in the number of Buddhist monasteries and the amount of land they owned. It was also during this period that many scholars made pilgrimages to India and returned with text and spiritual and intellectual inspiration that greatly enriched Buddhism in China. There were conflicts and there were similarities between the Buddhist and the Confucians in Chinese society, and a lot of that was affected by the adoption of Taoism. Taoism is a critique of Confucianism. In Buddhism, some of the similarities are that they're both based on text, Buddhist teachings and Confucian teachings by Confucius himself. In Buddhism, the emphasis is on metaphysics, on things having an appearance but not being real. There's an emphasis on celibacy, on going off into isolation and to finding nirvana, whereas the emphasis with Confucianism is on ethics, how to be an ethical ruler, or in politics, and family-centered, extremely family-centered, and the idea of filial piety. Buddhism in China never completely recovered from the Great Persecution of 845. The various schools that retained their most vitality in China were the Chan school, which was noted for its emphasis on meditation, and the Pure Land tradition, which emphasized devotion to the Buddha himself. The Chan school of Buddhism was most influential among the elite, especially through the arts. Chan artists during the Sung Dynasty had a decisive impact on Chinese landscape painting. They used images of flowers and rivers and trees to get to the insight into the emptiness of all reality. The Pure Land tradition was most influential among the population as a whole and was sometimes associated with secret societies and peasant uprisings. But the two Buddhist traditions were often very closely linked. Towards the end of the Tang Dynasty, Chinese emperors began to favor Taoism over Buddhism. Monks and nuns were forced to become secularized. They could no longer be monks and nuns. Temples and libraries were destroyed. The prominent statues of Buddhism in Chinese culture began to decline as the dynasty and the central government declined as well during the 8th century to the 9th century. Buddhist convents and temples that were exempt from state taxes before were targeted by the state for taxation. In 845, Emperor Wusong of Tang finally shut down 4,600 Buddhist monasteries, along with 40,000 temples and shrines, and forced 260,000 Buddhist monks and nuns to return to secular life. This episode would later be dubbed one of the 4 Buddhist persecutions in China. The rise of the particular school of Neo-Confucianism led by Zhu Qi takes on special meaning in Neo-Confucianism. The Neo-Confucian upsurge beginning in the late Tang embraced many exciting extensions of the classical vision. Noteworthy during the Sung was the emergence of new Confucian metaphysics that was influenced by Buddhism and that borrowed freely from Taoist terminology while rejecting both religions. Of relevance to the Sung political and social conditions was its continuous growth into a well-integrated philosophical system that synthesized metaphysics, ethics, social ideals, political aspirations, familial life, and individual discipline and self-cultivation.